Hello, and welcome to our first ever episode of the Osceola's Nole Your Enemy podcast. My name is Pat Burnham. I'll be your host, and joining me today will be Ron Higgins, lead columnist and football writer for the LSU rival site Tiger Details. Ron, I know it's been busy down there, and one of the hottest places on earth, probably might be the only place hotter than Tallahassee, is Baton Rouge. But thanks for joining us.
Sure, I'm glad to be here. I always love doing these things. You know, football's right around the corner when this happens. I mean, Florida State's a week closer to it than LSU.
Yeah. Yeah.
That didn't work out well for LSU last year. They had to play UCLA, who played Hawaii the week before, and LSU looked like a team that was a week behind when they played UCLA.
Yeah. Well, I think I do have some questions about what we'll know about Florida State coming out of the Duquesne game. I think there'll still be some questions until Florida State gets to New Orleans and plays LSU. But yeah, certainly maybe work out some of the kinks for Florida State coming into that game. Maybe some things they were not aware of. But listen, obviously a lot going on down there in Baton Rouge. Probably, I think what Florida State people want to know about LSU is what are some of the changes you've seen in the program as it has transitioned from Ed Orgeron to Brian Kelly?
Well, first of all, you've got a head coach who doesn't run around with his shirt off. You know, I mean that helps. I've seen that you have a proven veteran head coach who is confident in his method of winning and his plan, and he's confident in his teaching this to his staff, and his staff passing on to his players. His players buying in. The players have bought into Brian Kelly big time. They see his credentials. He has a great way about him of communication. He has a great way of empowering his players somewhat, yet they understand who's the boss. But most of all, I think the players are excited because they know this guy has a solid plan. And the last 2 years after LSU won the national championship, Ed Orgeron had no plan for sustainability. I mean, he made bad hires. He coordinated for coordinators 2 years in a row, and then basically was waiting to get fired last year. And this team has a ton of talent. I mean, they're deep at wide receiver. They got a killer defensive line. It's a matter if they can get all the chemistry together, because you have 13 transfers, and Brian Kelly, he didn't want to recruit 13 transfers, but LSU had 39 scholarship players after last year's Texas Bowl in January. So he knew he had to go find some experienced help pretty quick. And so 5 of LSU's top 6 cornerbacks are transfers. Probably 2 of the offensive starting line are transfers. Get somebody who alternated running back among the top 2 is a transfer. Somebody in the wide receiving top 6 wide receivers is a transfer. So it's a matter of how quickly these transfers can acclimate. And of course, you have a transfer battling for the starting quarterback job in Arizona State's Jaden Daniels. So that's the biggest question at this point. Even today for LSU, they're 18 days away from Florida State, and they're not penciled in yet at a lot of positions, and that's the biggest mystery. They're penciled in. I mean, there's nothing really definite at too many positions. Probably along the defensive front more anywhere else, but quarterback battle's still wide open. They had a scrimmage today. Both guys looked really good in what they do. Daniels is an absolute jet of a runner, and they need to improve his passing. But today he looked good. He was like 6 of 8, 80-something yards, made good throws. And then other guys, Garrett Nussmeier, son of Doug Nussmeier, offensive coordinator at various places in college, and now the Cowboys quarterbacks coach. And he's a redshirt freshman who played the full 4 games last year, and started 1 game. And he looks a lot better than he did last year. Learned how to manage an offense and understand when to take shots downfield. So, and he was like 6 of 9 today. And there's not. I mean, there's no decision on quarterback yet.
Yep.
And they don't want to use. They don't want to use two. But honestly, if there's no separation, if both of them are playing pretty good, and they kind of both bring a little bit different to the table, that might happen.
Yeah. Well, obviously, in his past, Brian Kelly has chosen to be a run-heavy offense. He really likes the power game. We've seen that here at Florida State and the times we have played against him. Outside of Daniels and Nussmeier, who are some of the other skill players that Florida State fans will want to be aware of coming in to the game in 2 weeks?
Oh, you start with Kayshon Boutte, wide receiver, preseason All-American first team. Only played 16 games in his college career and is just played lights out. He got hurt about 6 games into it last year, but was on pace for a tremendous season. He's LSU's next great NFL receiver. He's been projected in the top 10 NFL draft. That's a guy you got to look for. I mean, Malik Neighbors is another receiver, but they've got about 5 or 6 receivers at least or more that have a shot at the NFL. I mean, LSU right now has 6 receivers in the NFL who start. And they're well known to football fans. I mean, Odell Beckham and Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. These guys are right along that line of receivers. So those are the guys you got to look for. Daniels is just an absolute running threat. I mean, look, it's so hard in scrimmages for a quarterback to gain yards because as you know, they don't tackle them as soon as they're touched, they're down. He had a 14-yard run on the RPO today, and that's like a 40-yard run normally because he dodged like 3 people and put together 40 before anybody could touch him. He's exceptionally fast. And I think as much as Brian Kelly would like to be run oriented, the strength of his team are the receivers and how many of them there are. I mean, all shapes and sizes. Their tight ends will probably end up catching a lot of balls. And one of those is Mason Taylor, son of Jason Taylor, Bonnie Offense Hall of Famer, the great, good-looking kid. So, offensively, they lean toward the wide receivers, but their top 2 running backs, John Emery Jr., who's been here, who was like a 5-star out of high school and has ran into some injuries, and then last year had academic problems and had to sit out. He wants to have a good year, and also running back from Penn State, Noah Kane, a Baton Rouge product, and he's looked good. But honestly, I know Brian Kelly would like to establish that run game, but from what I saw today and what LSU getting the ball out of their quarterback's hands quick and having athletes make plays, that might be the way they prefer. Until the running game can come around.
Yeah. You switch over to defense. I've talked to several people who you have some familiarity with LSU, and they really think that you guys have 2 strong defensive ends. Tell us a little bit about the defensive front, which has always been a area of strength for the Tiger program.
Well, 2 defensive ends, BJ Al-Jalari and Ali Gay, 2 big, strong, quick, physical guys, great pass rushers, good tacklers, and they're kind of turned loose because the middle of their line probably has 2 guys who they could go round 1 the NFL draft when they eventually come out. And one of them is a guy named Mason Smith, who's a sophomore. He's 6'5" and 300, chiseled like an Adonis, and is just flat fast. He reminds me, I told somebody, he reminds me of that clip of Reggie White where you see Reggie White throw a blocker and get back. That's basically Mason Smith.
Yeah, I know he was highly solid after coming out of high school. Might have been the #1 rated prospect in the.
Yeah, and their linebackers. 2 of their 3 linebackers are former ACC linebackers. Mike Jones from Clemson, who transferred last year, and I think Will Weeks was at Virginia, I believe, and he's their linebacker. So again, like I'm talking about, you know, both their projected starting cornerbacks. One's an Ohio State transfer. One is Jared Bernard Converse is Oklahoma State transfer. Guys who started for 2 and 3 years, who have a ton of experience. So, but again, you have to mesh all these new faces together, especially in the secondary, and that's the question, whether they can get that act together enough for the season opener to look like they know what they're doing.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see more and more of that around college football. Florida State has you utilize the transfer portal pretty well the last 2 years, and so I think you're right. Especially if guys aren't transferring in the spring, you've really got to try to assimilate them into the program as fast as you can. Now, we know that Max Johnson transferred to Texas A&M. There were some other graduations, NFL. I've had some conversations with my buddies here in Tallahassee. Everybody seems to think this is a LSU team that's going to struggle to find its feet in the SEC West. I think, in my opinion, some of that is a little bit overblown about the demise of the LSU program. I've seen them picked last on their side of the division. I think people might be taking LSU too lightly. Am I wrong in that assessment?
No, I mean this team happy to be taken lightly. I mean this team is still full of talent, still a ton of 4-star guys, a lot of 5-star guys, especially a program that hasn't been coached for the last couple of years, because again, you had a guy who, after Ed Orgeron got his raise right after LSU won a national championship and then got a divorce, he spent the next 2 years just mailing it in, honestly. And you have and there's still a ton of. I mean, Ed was a great recruiter, and he recruited a ton of talent, but it wasn't well coached. And he made bad hires as coordinators, and it got him fired. And really, you could sense early last year, like he was almost begging to fire me. So, and they did. They paid him $16 million to walk, which you or I would probably pull a hamstring running out the door with $16 million. We're going to get quick enough. But I agree with you. I think people are sleeping on this team. And then, to me, the only question is, how quickly can the chemistry come about? The talent is absolutely there.
Well, I know what Ed's doing with some of that $16 million. I got a picture from a buddy of mine from his cell phone where he had run into Coach Orgeron, I believe, in Destin, getting a cup of coffee. So Coach Orgeron's he's got nice plans for his post-football career. Listen, I've seen, you don't get to see a lot of clips of opposing teams practice, but the few clips I've seen, looks like LSU's had a very physical camp. How physical a football team is this LSU team?
No, they're physical. I mean, their offensive front, basically, they're almost like 340 across. And it's not a fat 340, it's a muscular 340. They've done a really good job with new way coach has done a great job of training these guys. And defensively, it's the same thing. I mean, every guy on this team, I mean, even their receivers look muscled up. Again, it's a new strength coach. He's more into modern ways of weight training with a lot of analytics. I mean, a lot of modern technology rather than just squatting 500.
Right.
And it really has benefited them. They'll be physical. I mean, they've had times in camp they've been physical, but I mean, Kelly's really smart about, picking and choosing when to hit and when not to hit. And because, you don't want to lose some of your best players in camp. And he's been careful to do that. I mean, the quarterback room got one guy lighter this week when
Miles Brennan
decided to hang it up, and which was fine. I mean, this was going to be his 6th year. The guy had had terrible luck with injuries, and one of those things where he made a decision, I'm not going to do this anymore. Uh, and 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 good for him. But again, LSU has two good options, and they got a really good freshman. Uh,
Walker Howard.
yeah, Walker. But watching today, it kind of fascinated me that Daniels has got a really good short, accurate arm, but really doesn't like to go downfield. Nussmeier is the guy that can go downfield and the guy who can throw the deep outs with confidence. So in that sense, they're kind of a little bit different. Daniels is a guy who can, when he's flush from the pocket, he can make plays. Gus Meyer, not as easily. So it's going to be a really good choice to see who starts this opener. I mean, because both they're about dead even. I mean, the only reason I would pick Daniels at this point, two reasons. One is because when all new offensive line, you would like a guy who feels like can run away from pressure.
Yep.
And secondly, Jaden Daniels has started every game of his career since his freshman year in high school, but one game at UCLA when he was hurt. So this is a guy who is used to winning starting jobs and knowing how to keep them. And amazing enough, I mean, the fact he started 29 of 30 at UCLA is kind of amazing, and is because this guy's like 200 pounds at most. I mean,
he looks very skinny.
Look, he's very skinny, and I guess I guess his whole thing is, I don't want to get hit. That's why I run. I want to get hit by large people. And it's funny when we talk to him about, the difference between coming from the Pac-12 to SEC. He goes, there's just a lot, there's a lot more bigger, meaner guys here. Yeah. Which is true. So, and I think he's enjoyed the fact that he's playing with better talent around him, more guys who can make plays. And I believe that was one of the reasons he came to LSU, or he wanted to be with a team where he felt like he didn't have the whole offense didn't fall on his shoulders, that there were playmaker options he can get the ball to. And I think that appealed to him.
I know we said we were going to come back the week of the game and do another one of these chats, but outside of the quarterback battle, what are the top two questions you have left as LSU goes into its last 8 or 9 days of camp?
Offensive line, can they solidify it? You have two transfers who have been starting the last couple of weeks. You have a freshman left tackle who will start, a true freshman, and he was their best lineman in the spring, and he is really, really good. But you kind of wonder,
true freshman.
Yeah, when your best lineman is a true freshman, you kind of wonder. That's one of them. And also, as odd as it sounds, their kicking game. The last 4 years in the SEC, LSU had the highest field goal accuracy in the league at 84%. They also had the highest touchback ratio in the SEC in kickoffs, around 84%. They got to replace all of that, and a punter. Of course, they got a Notre Dame transfer as punter, so there you go. But that's also a huge thing for LSU, because it's been produced a lot of points in the last 4 years, and no returns on kickoffs.
Well, now we'll come back and see if any of those questions have been answered the week of the game. Now, obviously, New Orleans is kind of going to be like a home game for LSU. Florida State will certainly send its fair share of fans. Our owner, Jerry Cutts, our publisher, he is three go-to spots in New Orleans have always been Felix Oyster Bar, Mother's, and Pascal Manali's. If there were outside of those three, are there any places Seminole fans should look for or try to get to in New Orleans on Labor Day weekend?
There's an old school steakhouse that's not in the quarter named Charlie's, which is unbelievable. Charlie's Steakhouse is not in the quarter. I think it's in Uptown. Okay. That's a place I love going to. But I got to tell you, Mother's is as good as it gets in New Orleans. It's the this small place about a block from the Harris Casino. It sits on a corner. It's consistently got a line of people going out, and it's kind of like a little cafeteria style. And it's got just killer gumbo, killer crawfish etouffee, killer jambalaya, killer red beans and rice, and what we call in New Orleans a debris po' boy. A debris po' boy is it's all the roast beef shavings that have fallen off a roast beef bone into the gravy, and it soaks in the gravy, and they just dump it on a nice French bread bun. It's all local stuff, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm sure that we're going to make that line a little bit longer as the cars from Tallahassee enter New Orleans in the fourth, fifth quarter and all that good stuff. Well, obviously look forward to catching up with you again, Ron, and get some more talk about Florida State and LSU, but certainly appreciate your time and answer some of our questions that we had about LSU, at least in camp, and look forward to catching up with you again on that.
Absolutely. The only thing I can guarantee about the trip to New Orleans is they won't run out of liquor.